tonight familiar, because over the last few days during the weekend, especially, I've been talking about patience, and I'm planning to talk about patience again this evening. But if you have heard any of those previous talks, I think you might find a few different things here. And patience is such an important quality and practice. I mean, the Buddha said it was the highest austerity. It was and had talked about the importance of it in various ways. And I'm sure we know this, it's good to reflect and remind ourselves, I think, of the power of patience. I know, for example, we can really benefit from being patient in our meditation practice, to be willing to really slow things down, reduce our expectations. And of course, it also needs to be held, patience needs to be held in balance. And I'll talk a little bit more about when should we stop being patient and do something else in a minute. But when we think about, the things that are important to be patient with, a lot of it is the experience that's arising for us. In meditation, when we have strong feeling, for example, it can be important to stay present with that feeling so that we can allow it to work through ourselves. And this is true when we're not meditating also. I think one of the greatest benefits and functions of mindfulness is to be able to stay present with what we're feeling, especially when it's strong emotion, so that we can understand it. And this is exactly what the Buddha talked about in the Four Noble Truths. This is such the bedrock of our practice, because whenever we experience dukkha, suffering, discomfort, dissatisfaction, then he said we should turn towards that experience, towards that feeling. That's the first noble truth. And really come to understand it. And that takes patience. Being present with that strong feeling, whatever it might be. Just recently, someone's been talking with me about being present with his partner as she was dying. And it was a really difficult death. And he's, clearly he needed to have a lot of patience with that whole process. It took time. I don't know if you've had this kind of experience, but you can't do anything better, I think, than be present and patient and in service to the person you're caring for, without judgment. Really being willing to stay present with one's own feelings and stay present with the situation. This takes a lot of patient endurance. And this is a strong example of where patience is really a tremendous service to us and to the people around us. But of course, we have lighter examples that come up all the time, whether it's at work and someone's not doing what you expect them to be doing, or maybe what they should be doing, or maybe there are people who get upset with us for various reasons. And, having patience during those encounters can be so important. Patience as we're driving on the road. I know meditation or Dhamma teachers talk about this kind of thing a lot because it's so common, and it's such a great place to practice patience. What if we really slow things down in terms of the way we're thinking and acting? And there's a certain relationship here with patience to staying in the present moment. Is when we're not patient, we're running out into the future, or we're, immediately reacting, maybe without much mindfulness. But if we really notice, well, what is it like if I really slow down here and use patience and notice how the feeling changes, that we can be calm even though things are challenging. It can be helpful, and we can be more helpful to others. There's a lovely little sutta in the numerical discourses, I think it is, and it's where this man comes to the Buddha and he's very angry, and he tells the Buddha off because one of his relatives joined the Sangha, became a monk, and he was really, really angry about this. And so he's really being rude and really giving the Buddha a hard time. And the Buddha is just silent. And then this person says, "Oh, I've beaten you. I've won." And then the Buddha says to him, it's foolish to say that we've won when we're speaking harshly to someone and they're silent, because patience is really the true victory for those who understand. And when you get angry at someone who's angry, you just make things worse for yourself. And if you don't get angry at someone who's angry, you really win what's very hard to win. And when you know someone's angry, you're acting for their benefit and for your benefit if you yourself are mindful and stay calm. But if someone's not skilled in Dhamma, they might consider one who heals themselves and the other person to be a fool. And when the Buddha said this to this man, he really calmed down. He was so inspired, actually. He wound up becoming a monk and got enlightened pretty soon. And the very happy ending there. But to just think about how being patient under very difficult circumstances can be a real healing for ourselves and for other people. The Buddha talked about being patient with, those things we can't change. Hot and heat and cold and wind and burning sun and, creeping critters and all those things that you may just have to endure. Yes, maybe you can avoid it. That's good, but sometimes we can't. And then we can be patient instead of grumpy, instead of irritable, instead of demanding. One of the things that happens a lot in our culture is that there's an attitude of, I have the right to have things the way I want them to be. And if people don't sort of make that happen, we can be angry and upset, or even litigious. I know about a woman who was on the local train, and people were standing up waiting to get out, and the train bolted a little bit and she fell and she actually broke her leg, and she was so angry that she sued the train company, and she blamed the person who was standing behind her, said that he pushed her. And it's like things happen, and we can be patient. And it's so much more helpful to us. So much of our energy can be caught up in blame and retaliation when it just makes things worse. Okay, having said all that, when is it time to take action? When is it time to not be not be as quiet, patient? Well, the when things are unwholesome, that's a time to really look and be swift in our action to try to understand what's going on in us and with us, and get support if we need it, to make changes in our approach, in our behavior, um, in our determination, perhaps. So I'm very interested in hearing about your thoughts on this, but also I want to add that there are a couple of words in Pali that you find in the suttas in many places that get translated as patience. And one of them's Kanti, which some of you may know. That's the patience that's part of the 10 perfections or the paramis. And the other one is Kama, not Kama about action, but Kama is Khama. It also means patience, and both of these words can also mean forgiveness. And I think it's interesting to look at the connection between patience and forgiveness, and to see that when we're patient and present in the moment, we also have this, I think, the right kind of mental attitude where forgiveness can arise. Forgiveness for ourselves, for the things we've done in the past that we might regret. Forgiveness for what other people may have done. So those are some thoughts that I'm really interested in hearing what you think, or if you have questions. That's where the real Dhamma comes out, I find. When people, try to apply this. How does it work in your life? What have you experienced? And is there anything you want to do with this idea, with the reminder? So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Ayya. Because we've got more people than Ayya can see all at one time, I think either just unmute yourself and speak up, or you can do the raise hand feature. But if you're just waving your physical hand, I don't think Ayya can see you.
I think I have everybody on one
On
screen,
your
actually.
screen? You do? Okay. Well, then
I
you can
think
just wave your hand.
so you can wave your hand, but yeah. You're so patient. We'll just kind of wait here.
We
Yes,
lost the
Marilyn.
connection at one stage, and it was just as you
Oh,
were gonna tell us when we could uh,
Take
take
action
action.
rather than being
Yeah.
patient. Yeah, we lost the
If you could
connection.
just summarize really quickly, because we just missed
mm,
a little bit of it there.
okay, sure. Um, yeah, when do you take action? I, for sure, when the situation is turned unwholesome. So when our own mind becomes unwholesome, we want to take action to bring it back to what's wholesome. So you might call that, you might think of right effort, of course, is that kind of action where, there's unwholesome thoughts and you do what you can to calm them down and replace them with wholesome thoughts. And there are several methods that the Buddha gives to do that. And also in our interactions with people. Now, one good way for, as the example of the Buddha, when that person was angry with him, one good way to do it, if someone's angry with us or upset just in general, is to really listen, to really give them our attention. That takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of forbearance. That's another meaning that comes in those two words, kandi and kama, and that forbearance, that ability to endure. If someone's really upset at us or not, regardless, and what's really helpful is to really listen and see what we can understand about it. And also for ourselves, when there's a lot of strong feeling in us, to be patient. But when things are unwholesome, and the Buddha really often said that wisdom, he defined wisdom as knowing the difference between what's wholesome and unwholesome. And the first line of unwholesome things are, those things that go against the moral precepts. But then, of course, there are other things too that are unwholesome. A very nice list appears in the eighth sutta in the middle length discourses called effacement. And you can really, the Buddha gives this beautiful formula, really, for how to really rub away those unwholesome tendencies and habits and replace them until they just don't exist in our character anymore. It's a really beautiful, beautiful sutta. So thank you for the question. I actually didn't say all that the first time, so hopefully that's helpful. Now, Marilyn.
Hello, Ayya. I'm so happy to be here. I've had an experience over the last few years where I've been dealing from a concussion with tremendous headaches and possibly some vision loss and a lot of blurriness. And so with my practice, what took quite a while before I could even get back into a place where I could meditate. But I found patience is such a beautiful word because I've had to dig so deeply to pull myself back up to a place where I can be balanced during the day. It's like this dance that goes on. I feel myself falling and then bringing myself back up. And so it's a tremendous lesson in patience. And I think for me, it's been hard to find that balance where I can try to create that for me every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm asking for some wise words.
Well, I think you're probably learning this at such a potent level that you probably have a lot of wise words for anyone who's going through those things. And I don't know if you've ever heard Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi talk about his experience of head pain.
I haven't.
You might see if you can find something online, or maybe someone can look it up for you if that's helpful. because he's had head pain ever since he really started translating back in Sri Lanka like decades ago. He has suffered from this pressure in the head and pain. And of course, it doesn't stay constant. And I kind of hear that in your experience too. Generally, that's the case with pain. It's not there all the time, or it's not there at the same intensity all the time. And I don't know if have you done any work with mindfulness-based stress reduction?
No, I haven't.
No?
No.
You might look into it. People tend to get a lot of help from that. We're working with pain and chronic pain and many other kinds of ailments. And I know that there's a course, I think, offered by someone in Seattle online, but it might be helpful to actually meet online with someone if you can find that resource, because it's a very lovely program for developing mindfulness in a way that really addresses what you're experiencing. And there are some helpful guided meditations, and there are helpful exercises, and there are helpful discussions. So I would recommend you try it and see how that fits into your experience. And my guess is you'll pick up some good approaches through that.
I appreciate that. One of the things I've tried to do for myself, because I know what I've lost, like physically, I guess in some instances, I may not get back. And so I've had that kind of desire to be back where I was before the accident. So what I've tried to do for myself, when I can do it, is to concentrate on the Brahma Viharas and for myself, but not sending them out, but to try and give that to myself to help me heal.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And also, if you fill yourself with those qualities and use those qualities whenever it's appropriate, like with loving kindness, that's pretty appropriate anytime.
Pretty tough sometimes.
Anytime. I'm sorry, what?
It's pretty tough sometimes to do that.
It can be very tough, very tough. And then the other Brahma Viharas might be more appropriate at the time, because compassion is for when there's suffering. And that's what, so much of, what's bringing you to that point of wanting to really bring in the Brahma Viharas and finding, appreciative joy, really looking for the good in your life, in what other people do, and putting emphasis on it can help. And also, and of course, the equanimity, but it's like they really are applicable to different circumstances, and there's always one that's applicable, one or more. And so that's an excellent practice. And realizing that and thinking about how all of us all the time have limitations, and they keep changing. And it's hard, as you say, when we think, oh, well, now I may never get that back again. That's like second arrow stuff. I'm guessing you probably know that teaching of the Buddha.
Yes.
And when we can recognize that that's what we're doing, bring some kindness to our mind, to our mental state, and forgiveness, and just remind ourselves, look, no, let's not run into the future and think about what it might be like, because none of us ever knows anyway. We can be just as healthy as anything, and then in a minute it can change. In a minute, for any of us, no matter how old we are, what our circumstances are. So I really want to encourage you to try. I mean, you are trying, I know, but if there's any inspiration in that at all, to really work with that in that way, that's also like, all of this is really helping you develop your mind. This is the most important thing that we can do, is to develop the mind, to develop our character. And there's a point where we're all going to die and the body doesn't come with us. All the physical pain will be immediately gone when that happens. But what we're doing with our mind, that will continue. And so, I mean, unless we've reached and realized Nibbana, which is totally cool, don't hesitate.
I thank you so much. Appreciate
Yeah.
it very much.
You're welcome, Marilyn.
I have to exit from the screen.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much.
Nadab?
Hi, yeah, I'll try to get this out coherently, but I remember I think it was as soon as early as high school, thinking, wow, I need to work on patience. And I thought I was very wise for recognizing that. But it's been something I've been working on for years, because every day you're dealing with something different and different challenge, and it requires a different kind of approach. And I would sort of classify it in 3 different areas, at least for me. Is one, I just took a first aid course the other day, and I realized there's not a lot of time to be patient. You have to move very quickly. So that's one thing, like when you're responding to an emergency. And then where dealing with other people, so interactions with other people, I find that timeline is a lot longer depending on the person that's in your life, and how that person is going to be in your life and how you want that to be. And then just kind of piggybacking off of Marilyn's comments is just pain. Like I've had headaches since high school. So trying to be wise with those things. I'm just kind of curious, like, what does that look like? When does it kick in? Do you have like an aha moment, or is it just like an ongoing wisdom process that happens forever? Like, what is wisdom in these cases? And especially in the context of timelines. Is there a timeline? Is there a time when you just sort of have wisdom? Just hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so the wisdom factor, of course, is something we develop. And, like when you're having a headache, then knowing what you can do to help it relieve it is part of your wisdom. It's knowing your own body, knowing your own mind, doing what we can to make it as comfortable as we can, and as wholesome and happy as we can. And of course, that means we want to really look at our sila, our it's more than moral virtue. It's the purity of the mind. And as we investigate these kinds of things, and we practice with them, and we come to these kinds of discussions, and we learn, and wisdom develops. And especially if we have good friends who we can talk about what's going on with us, and we help each other develop wisdom. It's, to really continue to, what's interesting is all the aspects of practice help us develop in these ways. So we're working on our sila, on our virtue, working on our meditation, and then wisdom becomes part of it. When we're practicing the Brahma Viharas, like we talked about with Marilyn, there's also like, you know, the ability to bring the mind into those states and see how they apply for different situations. That helps us to develop our patience. And it's kind of like the patience and wisdom and all of these things continue to like grow as we continue to practice. And we really are practicing. We can practice with everything that comes along. So when you realized when you were in high school to practice patience, that's part of your spiritual path. You were very wise to know that. You know, wisdom doesn't mean we already know how to be perfect. It's knowing, you know, kind of what to do and how to progress and how to forgive, and you know, the whole idea of that development on the path. And of course then we're also putting in the causes and conditions for insight to arise, because really, you know, that direct experience of something that we didn't know before, that we can't get to through reasoning, that comes because we put in the conditions, and then, you know, something hits, you know, even that idea of I want to practice patience. I think patience is something we can practice for a lifetime, you know, and have great benefits from. So it isn't as if we there's no pat answer. It's a process. And we can tell which direction the process we're in is going. And when it's going in a negative direction, we're more irritable, we're more angry, we're more impatient. We know that we want to turn that around. When we become more happy, more loving, more forgiving, more comfortable in ourselves, because we're also being more honest and more available in a sense to life. It's going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just say that patience was one of the first benefits that I received when I started doing the practice. It was just a lovely gift.
Yes. Nice. Yes, Marilyn.
I just wanted to say sometimes for Nana, sometimes there has to be enough letting go to see.
Mm.
And when you get to that place where the patients come back, it's just like a grace, you know, that you can just let it in and flow over you, and you know, recognizing that it just is like you've been catapulted forward till the next time.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it has a lot to do with, I think you mentioned this too, Ayya, with who you associate with, is being around more, you know, wise people rather than foolish people, or people who aren't on the same path or whatever. Not that you're, not that I'm deliberately associating with one type over the other. It's just maybe the environment or that you're in, it's not as conducive for sort of developing these patience and the more skillful things. So that's definitely helped us for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. So true. I mean, the Buddha put so much emphasis on that, on, having good spiritual friends. And as you say, it's not like, oh, well, I'm not going to associate with, people, but we do, it is helpful to be with people who have similar interests and similar, intentions in life. And we really can, the Buddha said, look for someone who is really awesome with generosity, and then copy that. They don't have to be awesome with everything, but if they're really generous and, like really take that in and try to emulate that. And then he said the same thing about wisdom and the same thing about faith. And there's a fourth one: faith, wisdom, generosity, and virtue. Someone who's really, really tuned in to, that purity of action and speech, and even the purity of mind, and use that as an example. For a long time before I met up with the Dhamma, I really wondered, what is wisdom and who has it? You look at a lot of the people who get a lot of our attention in the world, and they may not be those ones. Who do you want to look up to, and who do you want to put attention on? Yes, Victor.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. And I wonder if you could say a few words as to how you proceed, to seek to develop or cultivate more patience and wisdom and etc., virtues, um, with the help in your meditation, and how to seek, shall we say, help from the higher entities, and I mean the Bodhisattva or the Buddha himself. If you
Mhm.
could say a few words to this, that would perhaps
Yeah,
enlighten us a bit.
I'm
Thank you.
happy to. I mean, one of the things that we do here at our Vihara is we put quite a lot of emphasis on the suttas and reading the Buddha's words. And it's really inspiring to know that those discourses in the Pali Canon, in the Sutta Pitaka, so those four major Nikayas of, the middle length and long and connected discourses and numerical discourses, they're very reliable. Almost all of it, we can really validate that this dates back to the time of the Buddha. And so reading the suttas and maybe meeting with other people and reading them, it's such an awesome thing to really recognize that the Buddha is really our teacher and the greatest spiritual mind in all of human history. And that what he discovered was not it wasn't something he made up. It's something he directly experienced, and he's reporting on that experience. And there's so many methods that the Buddha gives for just exactly what Victor's asking about, and all of us are working on. so many different ways to develop, to understand what wisdom is, to develop it, to develop patience, the Brahma Viharas, our virtue, everything. It's right there. And if we dig into it and we really read it, I mean, there are people who come to our place who have read all four Nikayas back to, front to back, and then they start over and they're reading again. And it gives you a real sense of the whole thing. If you just read an occasional sutta, that's good, but we might not get the breadth and depth and the more the broad understanding of what the Buddha taught. Because in one place he'll say, do this, do it like this. And then you think, oh, well, that's the way he said to do it. But then there's another place where he tells you a different formula. It's because we're all different and we all run into different circumstances in life as we go through. I mean, the Buddha has beautiful suttas about how to work with illness and death. There's a very good book by Bhante Analayo on mindfully facing disease and death that has it's 12 chapters focused on suttas, especially suttas that are also found in other traditions, the parallels, which really gives us a high sense of confidence that the Buddha actually taught that. And that's one of the things I think is so valuable, coming back to the early Buddhist texts. And then, of course, like we said, having other people in our life who are practicing, and the ability to really talk to someone, have a teacher, talk to someone, or get in touch with someone you trust to talk through the challenges we experience, because we all experience challenges. It's how we grow. And, if we can, work through things, see a new perspective on what we're experiencing, that can really help. So those are a couple of thoughts. If you find the suttas, boring, repetitive, I mean, they can be, then if you just go on to another sutta, if that's the case, and just see, or like I said, maybe find a way to study a little together. You're always welcome to show up on Wednesday night on our Zoom channel if you want to. We look at suttas every week, and it's been such a joy and an incredible grounding. You gain a confidence in your knowledge of what the Buddha actually taught. So I really recommend that if you feel so inclined. I've also used the practice of just taking one of those books and just letting it fall open to a spot to see what the guidance is currently. It's amazing how often it really hits home. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I'll ask Mary for those those books that you mentioned.
Yeah, you can also find all of it on suttacentral.net. It's a great resource for the teachings of the Buddha.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I'll just mention that when Ayya Brahmavara comes here on April 20th for a couple of months, she's planning to offer sutta studies 3 times a week. So we don't have the exact days yet nailed down, but that'll be advertised on the website once that happens. But yeah, highly recommended sutta studies.
That's great. It's great.
So we're probably coming to the end of our times, or any last burning questions for Ayya before we move into our to a ending blessing. And I'll just ask maybe if we can dedicate this evening. We have one of our community members, Dhammika. She just lost her husband about 2 days ago. He died at Dumunda. So it'd be lovely to keep him in mind.
I think I'm going to, for the closing, We can chant together. I'll share the screen if I still have that ability. It looks like I do.
Oh, good.
And this is sharing of blessings. We can include Dhammika,
Dhammika. Yes.
yeah, and her
Her husband's
friend,
name.
beloved, yes, and
Dunga. Yeah.
everyone who knows them. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest devas and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice. And through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. And then I'll just end by chanting a short blessing for everyone. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Buddhas. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Dhamma. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Sangha. May you ever be well.
Thank you, Ayya.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's always so wonderful when you join our group.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you for all your kind attention and your practice.
Yeah. We'll be in touch.
All right. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anumodana.
Yes, Anumodana to you too.
Thank you, Ayya.
You're welcome, Carolyn. Take care.
Thank you, Santussika, for organizing.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes. And for everything you've done, you do. It's wonderful. Thank you, Sanghamitta.
You're welcome.
All right.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
Dr. Marie.
Okay. Night.